quarterly town hall in 2021. Excuse the children in the background, they're getting ready for bed. Before I introduce our guests and give some updates, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for the privilege of being your councilman for the past year and 5 days now. There's something special about our communities and our small businesses, the pride we take in our neighborhoods, and how people come together to solve tough problems. I truly believe that the 4th District is Baltimore's best district. So thank you all. It's an honor to serve, and really excited about what we have coming forward. Excuse the squealing children in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I also want to thank our guests today, Baltimore's Health Commissioner, Dr. Letitia Dzirasa, Director of Public Works, Jason Mitchell, and from Recreation and Parks, Mr. Charlie Murphy, Tree Baltimore Manager, and Mr. Tim Almaguer, Division Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships. We're going to get to Dr. Dzirasa in a few minutes because she'll have to leave a little bit early, but I want to open up with a few community updates. Feel free to pop questions in the chat, and more will help us get through those questions and for Dr. Dzirasa to answer. So first, we'll start off with the community district updates. We've had some wonderful fall community get-togethers across the district, from Northwood to Chickenman Park to Walter P. Carter to Belvedere Square. I can't count the number of events that I've been to over the past few months, but I want to give shout outs to the neighborhoods and the community partners who hosted Halloween holiday events, or also to Loyola for helping organize cleanup days up and down the York Road corridor. I've also been able to go to some of the listening tours, go on some listening tours. One of the businesses on the York Road corridor, and another one with ROCA, which emphasizes persistent follow-up with the city's young people that may be at risk. Both of these have been very rewarding and helped inform my work in City Hall. Next, I want to give a special shout out and congratulations to Gecko for 30 years. And thank you, CARES, for all the work that you guys do in our community. Gecko held their gala last month, and it was a great opportunity to see and celebrate their ongoing work across the city. On the screen, you'll see information about Gecko Cares and the services they provide. Please feel free to screenshot or email us if you'd like information to share. And now on to a few other items of concern. So as fortunately as many of you know or have heard, the zoning board on November 30th allowed the proposed crematorium on York Road to move forward with limited conditions on its use. I testified against it alongside over 100 concerned neighbors, and I still don't support it, but the board has chose to ignore community concerns and to allow it to proceed. The next step is for the Maryland Department of the Environment to approve an air quality permit, and I understand that communities who have been organized against it are weighing their options for appeal. We have a timeline for the request for proposal process for the Winston building also. That's 1101 Winston Avenue. And this Friday is the submission deadline for people or companies interested in acquiring the building. There will be panel meetings and a community presentation starting next week into next year before recommendation to the commission in the first week of April. So lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to a very special team member who will be sadly leaving us tomorrow, Kara Madison, our policy and constituent services specialist from the University of Maryland School of Social Work. Kara will be taking a parental leave of absence, so congratulations, Kara. You can hear what you're looking forward to. And will be hopefully joining us again in the fall. And also our community engagement fellow from Loyola University, from the York Road Initiative, Kira McDonald, will also be taking a break for her winter break, but she'll also be back in January. So I just want to thank both of you ladies for all your awesome work, just being great resources to the team and the community. Also of note, we will be welcoming a new team member from Morgan State University, Sybil. She will be a community engagement support in the spring, and we'll have her introduce herself at our next town hall. And now I want to introduce our first special guest this evening, Dr. Dzirasa. She's been our health commissioner since 2019 and has really been a steady hand since the COVID-19 pandemic started. I know that there's a lot of concern about the new Omicron variant lately, so now seems like the perfect time to welcome Dr. Dzirasa for any updates that she can provide and to take a few questions. You can put your questions in the chat and we'll have Maura pose those questions either right now or if we run out of time, we'll follow up with the commissioner to get back to you in a few days. So Dr. Dzirasa,
Great.
floor is yours.
No, thanks so much, Councilman Conway. I'm going to share a similar disclaimer that I have a little one in the background as well. We may hear him from time to time, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with this group today, and want to just thank you for all that you're doing to stay healthy and safe here in the city, because it's not work that is just done by the health department. Really, it involves all of the residents here in Baltimore City. I'm going to talk at a very high level. Traditionally, I'll say I would go through our coronavirus dashboard. But if you don't know, there were some challenges at the state health department. They're investigating a data breach. And subsequently, our dashboard has not been updated since December 3rd. So we are operating on kind of the last couple pieces of information we had during that time. So we currently don't have any data updates, but traditionally, once we kind of get the data up and running, for those who don't know, you can always go to our dashboard, coronavirus.baltimorecity.gov, for updates around COVID case counts, percent positivity, the volume of testing, as well as vaccination status throughout the city, where we are in terms of percentages. As Councilman Conway mentioned, I think Omicron is the hot topic, and it was kind of like all these things happening at the same time. We lost some of our access to the data, and then we also began to see Omicron popping up as another variant. And I think what I'll say is, it's one of those things where, we're still learning so much. And I think that's hard to kind of grasp even 2 years into this, that there are things that we're still learning. And Omicron is no different, right? And so we saw Omicron pop up, really in parts of Africa, and subsequently, it's now in, I think, 70 plus countries. We are seeing that it does appear to be more transmissible than Delta. So for those that are familiar with Delta, and we talked when Delta was kind of coming out in the summer, that it was 2 times as transmissible as the original version. I think they're still identifying exactly how much more transmissible, but it is thought to be more transmissible generally. I think the other thing that I would say about variants in general, because it is likely that Omicron will not be the last, is that vaccination still remains paramount to helping us address COVID-19, right? And so variants like Omicron and Delta, they really arise because viruses replicate. And once they're allowed to replicate, because they're transferred from person to person, mutations are normal, right? And so this is a normal evolution of a virus, and they're evolving in order to escape, our defense mechanisms. And so the more of us that are vaccinated, the less opportunity we have for that to happen. We also still believe that vaccinations will help to reduce the risk of severe illness, death, disease, and hospitalization as it relates to COVID-19, even with Omicron. So again, I think if there was one takeaway from everything I say tonight, vaccination still remains key. Now, in terms of vaccination, though we don't have kind of that active data, we're still putting on multiple vaccination clinics per week. So again, you can go to that same website, coronavirus.baltimorecity.gov. I'll put some information in the chat, and find out where we're vaccinating. And most of our sites are offering more than one type of vaccination. So if you're eligible for that booster, you can mix and match. So if you had J&J, you can go to one of our sites doing Pfizer or doing Moderna and get that as your booster, and vice versa. I think along with vaccinations, what we've done as we're posting our schedule is we've identified those sites that are that include pediatric vaccination, right? So what we were seeing kind of prior to losing access to some of the real-time data is we were really seeing a rise in cases among children. So for the month of November, 40% of new cases were in children under 18, 27% were in children under 12. And so we were really beginning to see this uptick in cases And in some ways, it makes sense. This is our unvaccinated population, right? So they're going to be more susceptible generally. But it's something now that we have this tool in a vaccine where we can protect our younger population, that 5 to 11 group that's in school and certainly has similar risk factors to adults in terms of their exposure. So if anything, again, vaccination's key. Vaccinating our younger population that's now eligible is also very critical. The other thing that we are seeing, again, we do have access to hospitalization data. So that's maybe the one piece of data we have, and hospitalizations are increasing. We know that we're hearing anecdotally that there's some challenges with accessing testing. So we're trying to expand testing options. But all of these things point to, I think, the fact that we're likely experiencing high community transmission right now. And so many of the things that we've talked about throughout the pandemic to stay safe, especially as we're entering winter, especially as we're entering the holiday season, remain critical, right? And so Baltimore City still has an indoor mask order. Baltimore City still has an indoor mask order. So it's really critical that when you're in public settings that you maintain wearing that mask over your nose and your mouth. We also still recommend social distancing to, as much an extent as possible. Okay, we recommend social distancing, as much as possible. Certainly washing your hands, staying home if you're ill, right? I think all of us are longing for that traditional holiday gathering. Outdoors is still safer than indoors, and it's been pretty mild. We've had a mild winter so far. And so, if you still want to have that family gathering over the holiday, consider doing it outdoors, considering people testing before they come, right? And so even if they're vaccinated, ask your guests to test. I know I did for Thanksgiving. I did ask one, that guests be fully vaccinated, especially for our younger kids that were there, but also that they test prior to coming. Just out of an abundance of caution. And so those are things to consider. Same thing if you're considering traveling, look at the latest travel guidance that the CDC is putting out. But again, I can't stress enough, if you're not feeling well, stay home and get tested. If you think you've been exposed, stay home and get tested. It's don't risk it. And I will stop there because I know I said quite a bit, and I'm guessing there may be questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dzirasa, and everybody, just for an introduction. If you haven't worked or met with me yet, my name is Maura. I work for Councilman Conway, and I'll be running the Q&A portion. So I'll also pose some questions for the Health Commissioner right now. And so we have 3 for you, Dr. Dzirasa. The first one is, would you please share more information about the vaccine adverse events reporting system data and why more attention isn't being shown on this?
Sorry, I'm muted since I had some background over here. So I will say the vaccine adverse events reporting system is a system that is run by the CDC that has been in place for a number of years. And it's not just specific to the COVID-19 vaccine, it's for all vaccines. And so, I'm a pediatrician. And so when I was practicing, dealt a lot with vaccinating our young people. And so any vaccine that you give, if it is suspected that, perhaps someone experienced a side effect related to that vaccine, whatever the vaccine might be, then we're encouraged, that individuals encouraged to report that into this online system, again, sponsored by the CDC and the FDA. I will say they have mentioned, I think, some of the side effects that we know that are associated with the vaccine, some of the major side effects. And so I'll talk about one that as it relates to our young people. And so we have seen, certainly with the mRNA vaccine series, that myocarditis is a very rare adverse event that can occur. Specifically, it's more common in young men. So again, I think it's important to note that the odds of getting COVID are still probably a lot higher than getting this myocarditis, but nonetheless, I understand wanting to make an informed decision and wanting to understand what the side effects are. Likewise, we saw that there were issues with clotting early on with the Johnson and hold on. We saw that there were rare clots that were found in young women, specifically under the age of 50, who would receive the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. So, what we generally do, how we generally handle that is that we are making sure that we're informing individuals when they come to get the vaccine that this is a rare event, but it has been reported. So we want to make sure that you know about it so that you can make an informed decision. And your decision might be to get a different vaccine, right? And so again, that adverse clotting event was associated with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, but not associated with the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. So we want people to make educated decisions, but you can go to VAERS, anyone can go to VAERS and report an adverse event, as well as look up any data on the vaccine.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying all that. We have two more questions, but I'll ask this one first. Someone in the chat asked, what are the best practices in COVID-19 care for children from birth to 5 years old?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that the biggest thing, obviously, this is a population that's not yet, those at least 0 to 4 is not yet eligible for the vaccine. And so, the one pro that I've seen in this age group is that transmission seems to be a lot lower in 0 to 4. We've seen that in national data. We've seen that in local data, that they are not, they get it. Let me be clear. They do get it. But the transmission rates, do not seem to be as high. And whether that's a reflection of them not getting tested, that could also be a component. But we know that they tend not to transmit it. It seems like as readily as older adolescents and adults. But it's similar to what you might do, honestly, in a typical cold and flu season. And then you add the mask for that child that's old enough to tolerate a mask, right? And so if you think about a typical cold and flu season, like we're having our kids, if you have a kid in daycare, they're washing their hands all the time. You want to make sure that they're covering their cough and their sneeze. They're washing their hands after they've coughed or sneezed into it. Again, they're not sharing utensils, like all the things that it's really hard to keep this group from doing. That they're not doing those things. And again, if they're not feeling well, get them tested. Again, I wonder if this group is not tested as much as we test the older kids, but certainly we can see COVID in this age group. So get them tested, and not just COVID, right? In this age group, we're also thinking about RSV, we're thinking about para-influenza, we're thinking about influenza, and again, many general pediatricians will have access to material for tests for all of those common viruses, because we did see a bit of an increase in RSV, this season, kind of out of the typical season, likely, again, once things open up and we were bringing more kids together. So, same hygiene things that we would normally think about. And then again, if they're above 2, ideally they can tolerate the mask wearing and they're masking over their nose and their mouth.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. And thank you so much for being here answering our questions. It's really an honor to host you and also to hear so directly some information from professionals about COVID. So thank you so much. And so I know you have to hop off soon, Dr. Dzirasa, but we have one last question for you. It's about testing. Someone said testing is sometimes hard. What kind of test should I get? A PCR versus rapid test? And does the city have any plans to expand testing in the future?
Yes, both are great questions. So what I'll start by saying is we still consider the PCR test, which is typically a send out, we still consider that to be the gold standard, meaning that especially when we think about people who aren't showing symptoms, like if I mentioned potentially testing before you travel or before you go to an event, if you could, I would go with the PCR, even though it might take a day or two to come back, because especially if you're not having symptoms, that's going to be the most accurate test. Now, if you're symptomatic, the thought is that the rapid is pretty good in those cases. But if you're asymptomatic, if you're not showing any symptoms, the thought is that maybe about 1 in 5, up to 1 in 5, will give you that false negative, right? So it's not detecting, disease in this asymptomatic person. So ideally, you're getting that PCR, that gold standard send out test, and then the rapid, or also known as antigen test. Again, I think it's if you don't have another option, if you don't have access, it's certainly better than nothing, right? And so, certainly consider the rapid test. I know, I'll speak for myself. I have a little one who is in preschool, and so I do have rapids at the house, but they're in the instance that he's symptomatic and I'm trying to make a decision, then I would use that rapid. But again, I generally only use it if someone is symptomatic. I think the PCR is kind of a little bit better for screening purposes, if that makes sense. I am going to share, I'm going to share both our vaccination and our testing schedule. I'll put links in the chat. We actually recently launched a pilot where we are providing rapid kits to some of our community-based organizations in areas where there is low testing access. So again, though the PCR is gold standard, but we know that there are communities that don't have access at all. And so we'd rather them have at least a rapid test, again, especially if they're having symptoms and they can't get to a pharmacy or can't get to their doctor, better to have that rapid. So we're giving those to CBOs, on a weekly basis as we get them from the state, and they're subsequently handing them out to residents in those areas, again, of low coverage. I'm going to share both our testing links and our vaccination links actually in the chat right now.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have, right, Maura? And I want to thank you, Dr. Dzirasa. That last question was one I wasn't expecting you to answer that way. That's actually really helpful. I've had to think about that question a couple of times with regards to attending meetings and otherwise. So thank you so much for providing your insight, your time. Once again, for folks who have questions of Dr. Dzirasa, but feel free to email my team. Unfortunately, she does have to leave after this portion, but we'll be sure to get any additional responses needed to you. So next up, we have Director Mitchell from the Department of Public Works, who is new to Baltimore and came to us from Oakland early this year. He was so excited about our district that one of the first community events that he came to when he landed here was at York and Beaumont, that crosswalk painting that we did. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Director Mitchell. Always a pleasure to see you, and appreciate you joining us today.
No problem. Thank you, Councilman Conway, for having us and our DPW team here today. First, and good afternoon, everyone, for joining in on your Wednesday afternoon, evening. I know everyone's busy, so I definitely want to give some great information. I too have a little one standing a few feet behind me, so if you hear some noise, that's the little one needing something. So just bear with me as we go through this. And I did send over a few slides. I don't know if we want to share them or if we had them, but definitely want to share that for the folks there that's in front of a computer screen or their tablet. I just want to kind of give everyone an overview on kind of our approach in DPW to what we're looking at doing, going not only concluding this calendar year, but really as we push forward in the next calendar year. And one of the things is our approach to what we do around our 4 E's. Number one, equity, right? Making sure there's equity in all we do. I know this is, one of the major goals of the city, Baltimore City, and Public Works is no different. We strive to do equity in all we do. And so as we look at our services and our programs, how do we approach it from an equitable lens? Eradication, especially around our illegal dumping and how we do our work in the field. How do we respond and to service requests and the requests for the public? And how do we do that faster? How do we communicate with our customers quicker? And how do we solve issues so that they don't continue on? And that's something that we're striving to improve in the next year. Education, whether that's education around how we use those blue containers that are rolling out in the street, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Ways to get rid of a trash, or ways to understand your utility bill. We want to really begin to educate our public on how we do that. And when all fails, how do we enforce the laws and the rules and the policies that's before us? And so, again, that's the last the last resort, because we want to make sure that we're working in great partnership with our public, our customers, and to you all here on the call. Just quickly, some of the things that we're looking forward to expanding and implementing in the next calendar year is our residential advisory council. And basically what Public Works have known, and many of our team members in DPW know, we can't do it alone, right? We don't have all the answers. We need our community voice to be able to provide us with, tools, ideas, and be strategic partners with us for how we solve issues, especially things around, our blight in our city, right? That's one of the major things that we see here in Baltimore City. One of the major complaints outside of water billing that we do see is around blight activity, illegal dumping, graffiti, and things of that nature. My little one, sorry about that. But how we deal with those issues and how do we solve it? Understanding that DPW, if you can go back one slide, understanding that DPW can't solve it all. If we, our next thing, volunteer program, and that's one of the things as we transition. How do we create a robust volunteer network plan? And I came from the city of Oakland, and one of the most successful programs we had was a robust volunteer program. Meaning, how do we all work together to ensure a safe and clean city? And so, using our volunteers, as an extension of the DPW family, how do we adopt a drain? How do we adopt a lot, similar to what we have now? How do we provide weekend cleanups and do that where we can work in partnership so folks feel like they have a partner in DPW? And so we're looking at really doing that. Something around education, our Eco Ambassador program, whereby we have our high school students going into, middle schools and high schools and really being voices of DPW. As we get to the youngsters, it's a lot harder for me to connect. I still use Facebook and, they're on Twitter, right? And our I forget the other social media platform. I'm not so much good at that, so it's hard for me to communicate. And that's the reason why we have youngsters talking with youngsters, right? And having peer-to-peer engagement and contact. But also using that peer-to-peer engagement as we educate our youngsters to be peer pressure on our adults. Even though I'm the public works director, sometimes I have a habit of not recycling correctly, and I have some youngsters that really kind of try to hold me accountable. And so, using those youngsters as accountability partner for us as adults. And we also are looking at resuming many more programs, street sweeping after the winter is over, really getting that program back up and operating. You probably are seeing street sweepers in the street now, sweeping communities, and I've been getting a lot of questions around that. Our sweepers, we have many new drivers, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. And so, and Yvonne Moore Jackson, our bureau head for solid waste, is on the call as well. And thank you for joining, Yvonne. But really looking at our routes, optimizing our routes, but also getting folks familiar with the routes that we have now. So you're going to see street sweepers out now, but with the idea that we're really gearing up for when it resumes back in, I think, spring. And then really continue our plan and assessment of our water billing. We meet as a department every day for 45 minutes from 9 to 9:45, really assessing our water billing system. Number one, trying to ensure that we get more accurate bills, more on-time bills, and that we begin to stabilize, our revenue within our water utility, with the ability to eventually want to stabilize our rates. And so we have seen a tremendous amount of progress, a tremendous, and I know it's not so much felt yet in with our communities and our key stakeholders, but over the next 3 months, we hopefully begin to see the same progress that we have seen, which is stabilizing our revenue and stabilizing getting bills out on time through our cycles. And so we are excited about that. There's still yet a lot of work to be done in that front. We still have, I would say 1 or 2 years of work to do to really see Baltimore be a lead in this space around utility billing. And so there's a lot of work to do, not just billing, but picking up the phone when folks call in timely manner, responding to emails within one business day. And when folks walk into our first floor of our Able Woman building, they get answers. And so we need to improve in all those things. And those are things that we're working on now. And actually are seeing some tremendous slides with the data that we are looking at daily. Next slide. But I just don't want to look at, what Public Works is doing, right? Because you get on the calls and you hear about plans and story. I do want to tell some stories about what Public Works has done in the face of this pandemic. And it's to the credit of many of the staff members that are here on this call today from Public Works. We've had struggles filling our CDL positions. And so internally, we started our own CDL training program. Number one, so that we can train folks to be CDL drivers and begin to drive our trash trucks, our recycling trucks, our street sweeper, and other maintenance equipment, heavy equipment. But also to give our internal staff opportunity for promotion, with the idea that we give them an opportunity to not only promote within their career, but to drive a workplace where folks feel like they have a chance. And so we graduated a few weeks ago, our first graduation class of 4. That was our pilot class. We are excited about those. Those folks are now in the queue to apply for CDL drivers. And 2, we currently have 9 individuals currently enrolled in our program. And as the new year comes, every 6 weeks or so, we plan to have another class go through and graduate, with the idea that we begin to fill our positions. And as we fill our positions, you will see a lot of things that we just spoke about and what I will be speaking to on the next item. Number one, we are seeing us resume street sweeping because we're able to get commercial drivers for our street sweeping vehicles. But we are able to also resume bulk waste pickups because of additional CDL drivers, because these vehicles take CDL to do it. So effective October 1st, we began to slowly integrate bulk waste pickups to the public. So initially, for the first 6 or 8 weeks, 2 months or so, we were just operating on Saturday, and we were doing 200 pickups every Saturday. We have since expanded the program Monday through Saturday, whereby Monday through Friday, we are doing 80 pickups per day, which is 400 Monday through Friday, and then 200 on the weekend, totaling 600 pickups. And so we are really excited about that. We saw when we initially just rolled it out on Saturdays, we saw a long list and line of people looking to do bulky. There was a huge appetite for the program. We had appointments all the way out until almost April. And so we expanded the program, as you can see, for another 400 pickups per week. We gave the people that was in the queue the first shot at getting those appointments, and now we're opening it up for everyone. So we are seeing people utilize the program, but we also are seeing people who don't have to wait as long for those programs, and that's what's exciting. Folks can get rid of their excess trash when they need to, their bulk trash when they need to. We also restored our graffiti operations. It was suspended in March of 2020. Earlier this summer, we extended that program where we were removing graffiti from public and private property. And so in order to use those services, both bulk and graffiti, just call 311 if you're in Baltimore City and request those services, and we'll get out there as quick as possible. Last but not least, or for this slide, we are working on the Water for All program. So we're getting very close to rolling out affordability program for our water utility. And so we know folks that have accounts with us for water billing and folks that are behind master meters, that they're struggling with those bills. And they're struggling with just making do every day. not just with water bill, but just how to, pay rent and have a hot meal every day. And so with that, we'll be rolling out our Water for All program, whereby if you are both behind a master meter or are direct customers with us, and based upon your income, you can qualify for water discounts. And so we're very, very excited about that program being rolled out and at the first of the new calendar year. Next slide. So some of the other services that we are either in the middle we're rolling out or we just have recently rolled out, and that's the recycling carts. So many of you have seen the blue recycling carts throughout the city. We have distributed about 106,000 recycling carts. That's about 58% of the carts that we're rolling out to date. So we're excited about that. And again, as we want to be more responsible, environmentally friendly, Baltimore, having the option of organic waste, food waste, which as you see the last slide, and recycling will help us continue to take steps for a more friendlier Baltimore City, and then part of our Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan. So we're excited about those blue carts. If you're in the communities of Glen Oaks, Idlewood, Loch Raven, Ramblewood, and Woodbourne, and hopefully I said those neighborhoods correctly. If you are in those neighborhoods this week, you should be receiving a cart. And so, and we'll continue to do that for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And lastly, we relaunched a citywide food scrap and composting program, whereby if you go to our 5 drop-off centers, and we can drop the link in the chat of where our drop-off centers are located. You can not only do food scrap and composting pilot, but we can begin to continue to enhance our Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan. So as you can see, there's been a lot going on in DPW. We are continuing to try to improve. If you want more information on the services, what's going on in DPW, what's happening, right, and your DPW news, you can go to publicworks.baltimorecity.gov/subscribe, and you definitely will get information on us, as well as you can find us on social media, and you can find a lot of information on us. So I know I only had a few minutes. I might have been over my allotment, but I wanted to make sure that you know about some of these great services that not only the city has, but also some of the work that we're doing in coordination with Councilman Conway and his team. He's been really a big front, especially on some of our environmental challenge. He's been out there walking the streets with us. I've been walking with him, learning a lot from him, and I just want to thank him and his team for that partnership and hosting us and having us here today. With that, I conclude and be here to answer some questions if you need.
Yeah, thank you, Director Mitchell, and it's been a pleasure serving with you thus far, and appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing. I know you stepped into a number of issues, and we've been working with you to resolve those. Really glad to see all these issues that were turned off during the pandemic now beginning to come back online, and I'm sure constituents are also relieved to see that as well. We did not see any questions from folks in the chat. I want to encourage folks, if you do have questions for Director Mitchell, please use the chat function, and we'll make sure to ask those questions. But seeing no questions now, we're actually going to move on to our representatives from Rec and Parks, Tim and Charlie. Tim, Charlie, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Councilman, and everybody from the community inviting us. And we're humbled to be in the presence of the doctor. She's done an amazing job through the entire pandemic. And I too, in the spirit of children, I have 2 currently doing karate out my window here. I'm in the parking lot watching my 2 daughters do karate. So I might be pulled away at any moment. My name is Tim Almgren. I'm the Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships for Baltimore City Rec and Parks. And I've spent about 20 years in the Rec and Parks world. First in the nonprofit as one of the founders and executive director of the Friends of Patterson Park. And over the past 8 years, working with the recreation parks, which has been an amazing experience. The person that also should be here is Charnice Barnett. She's fantastic. She's a community liaison for this community. She does wonderful work. So, when you feel free to reach out to myself in the future, as well as Charnice. Just briefly, Rec and Parks, our mission, of course, is to improve the health and wellness of Baltimore through quality recreational programs, preserving parks and natural resources, and promoting fun and active lifestyle for all ages. And we do this through conservation, health and wellness, and of course, social equity. Our purview, just to name some, we have 262 parks, 50 some rec centers, 120 playgrounds, over 25 miles of trails. And Charlie will speak to, I don't want to steal his thunder, to all the trees that we also do. So it's a Herculean effort by some really fantastic people that are in our department. We're also nationally accredited. The National Rec and Parks Association has an accreditation process. And we're one of a few jurisdictions that actually is accredited through CAPRA. Currently, we're going through a strategic visioning and planning process that we can provide some information on, as well as we're starting to go down the path in our capital division to do a comprehensive capital plan that looks at not just piece by piece small parks, but look at the entire inventory of Rec and Parks assets and how to kind of master plan the entire inventory and future inventory of recreation parks. To that, we're moving ahead. Unfortunately, not in your district, Councilman, but we have the Middle Bench project, which is, one day. Consider, I think it is the rec center that this city deserves. Most of our rec centers were built in the 60s and 70s, and so they look like they were built in the 60s and 70s, kind of a post-apocalyptic architecture. And so they look more like garages than they look like rec centers. And so finally, with the direction of our director and our capital division, our chief of capital, Adam Borman, they're moving ahead to kind of modernize our inventory of rec centers to create rec centers that the city deserves, and not just secondhand rec centers, but world-class rec centers that are inviting, provide top-notch programming as well. To that effort, just in our division, recently we've been working in your district with Marie and Ms. McFadden at Dewey's, and they've been fantastic. We've been created some wonderful dialogue about how we improve that park and the services provided at the rec center. And of course, Mount Pleasant is finally open. The ice rink is finally open. It opened early in December, and we have public hours. I actually have them Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Friday, 8:45 to 10:45, kind of late night. And then Saturday, there's three sessions of public skating as well as Sunday. So I reached out to Scott Stanfill and our marketing division to actually put those. I looked on our own website and it's not updated. So know that if you like to skate or if you want to learn how to skate, it's opened in your district and it's a fantastic asset. So a little bit about our division. Community engagement was created again by the director as a dialogue. And in the past, a lot of our communication with the community was unidirectional. It was mostly marketing outcomes and not actually soliciting input from the community. And I think we're learning our lesson. And so over the past 2 years, or the new in the department, we created a community engagement division to do just that, to get people's input about what the product is going to look like, whether it be a rec center or whether it be a park, but also more importantly, the programming that goes into those same facilities. It's not enough just to build something. You have to breathe life into it with programming and events. And so that's our role, is to kind of be that conduit between the community and the department. So with that, I will be quiet and let Charlie send us home.
Thanks, Tim. I don't have a child, but I have a dog who presumably won't make any noise. So my name is Charlie Murphy. I run the Tree Baltimore program, which is the planting side of forestry. I am here on behalf of Eric Deal, who is the city arborist, at least for a couple more months before he retires early next year. So I want to talk briefly about planting, which is my bailiwick, and then a little bit about forestry in general. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions that come up when trees are discussed, so happy to answer those as well. So I run the planting side of things. There are multiple different tiers of our planting program. We have community-based plantings. We also have contractual plantings. We typically plant and give in total trees that get into the ground each season, being fall and spring. I think we're about 3,000 to 4,000 trees per season, give or take. This past fall, we did not have our contractual planting. I don't know if anybody reads the Brew or watches Fox local news. Our planting contract was pulled from the board for some reason, and we are working on getting that back out and completed. But that doesn't mean we didn't plant this season. So that would have been 1,300 trees that we didn't get in the ground this fall, but we will in the spring. We still got another like 2,000 trees into the hands of community folks like you all, as well as our nonprofit partners like Blue Water Baltimore and Baltimore Tree Trust. So when you're looking or interested in trees, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I'm happy to talk you through any of those. treebaltimore.org is our website. It has a ton of information on how to contact us if you're interested in planting, even if it's small scale, like a tree in front of your house, or a larger scale for your entire neighborhood that you're interested in. We have resources for all of that and can connect you with the right people if you want to take on a larger scale type of activity. If you're just interested and you don't really know how to get started, we have classes. For example, the Tree Keepers class, which teaches you about planting and pruning of young trees. We also have our Weed Warriors classes, which are more tied to the vines and invasive plants that are slowly taking over some of our natural areas and little smaller parks and larger parks in Baltimore. So that's kind of the planting side of things. We also have a giveaway program. So if you want a tree for your yard, not just along the street or in the parks, we also have programs for that. So be on the lookout this spring. Typically those giveaways start in early to mid-April and run through May. And then we do different things during the summer. Obviously, it's not an ideal planting season. And then we do it again in the fall. So if you're interested in a free tree for your yard, again, be on the lookout. Check us out on social media or our website for that information. For the other side of forestry, forestry is responsible for all park and street trees in terms of their overall maintenance and health. So we are the ones that are going out and removing dead trees, pruning dead branches, and things like that. We are also the ones that get called in the middle of the night during major windstorms. So we have a lot of different urgents that come up, as well as just standard 311 calls for maintenance, prunes, and removals. The way that process works, if you are ever have a tree in front of your house, or you have a tree that's down the block from you that you walk by all the time and you think it looks like there could be issues with it, please call it in a 311. We have a multitude of urban foresters who are ISA certified, which allows them the ability to really look at trees and diagnose what needs to happen, whether it's pruning or removal or nothing. So that is their job. So please call in any tree that you think may have an issue or you think some sort of expert should look at, and that is their job. Typically that happens, I believe, within 30 business days, and they update the 311 system with what the next step is. So if work is required, they would create a work order. If no work is required, they would close it out with a note saying no work was required. But just for a heads up for folks that maybe have called in 311 and are waiting for us to get to your trees, we do have quite a backlog that is strictly tied to just funding. We have more calls than we have money. We are currently working with a bit of carryover funding that we got from last fiscal year. So we're actually hoping to get rid of our backlog. Our current backlog is a little over 1,800 work orders. That's again, prunings or removals. And we're hoping with this carryover funding to rid that backlog by May of next year. That being said, we are estimating that another 1,000 to 1,100 work orders will be called in during that time. And we believe that our standard budget will be able to cover those. So we're hoping to actually catch up by the end of this fiscal year, which is July 1. Again, that is barring any major hurricanes or major storm events that could potentially take a hit to our funding and ramp up work orders. A final thing I'll mention, stumps. I'm sure folks have noticed stumps that have been in the ground for many years and are frustrated by it. I won't get into the details on why that is, but if you do have stumps that you're interested in getting out so that you can replant a tree, please let us know. You can just email us through the treebaltimore.org website, and that actually comes directly to me. And I will make sure that we get you on that stump removal list and on the spring planting list. If you get it to me soon enough, at a certain point, we'll have to cut off for the spring planting and put you on the fall planting. But we can definitely get you on that list. If you want the stump gone and you don't want a tree planted, I think it's just in the overall cube, which is part of what we're trying to get rid of in the backlog. But I don't think we have the funding to get rid of all of it, but a good portion of it we do. And we're doing that section by section, oldest to newest kind of thing. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Tim and Charlie, for all of the great information. I know parks and trees are always some of our favorite things and sometimes give us some issues. So it's good to know we have you two and the rest of the team to help us out there. And thank you for the information on the tree backlog. That's really exciting. So thank you all our agencies for the updates. I just wanted to clarify, I think there's a little bit of a miscommunication, but we are getting your questions in the chat. We did do Dr. Dzirasa's Q&A separately just because she had to hop off. But after the councilman gives a few short legislative updates, we're going to hop into the general Q&A, where I hope you'll all stick around to hear from some of our agency representatives to answer some of your questions. So with that, I will turn things back over to Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Maura. And thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Good to see you. So I wanted to touch on some of our legislative updates very quickly. So for those that are following, earlier today, we held our latest oversight hearing with the Baltimore Police Department and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The good news for our area is that the northern and northeastern districts are both seeing significant decreases in violent crime incidents, but we're still not where we'd like to be citywide and in the district. So we're going to continue to press BPD to show results and to replicate what's working in certain areas across the city and apply those where possible. We've also been holding hearings on issues like water billing, which Director Mitchell will probably talk a little bit about later on through questions. And on the issue of domestic violence, which we were reminded again of this past weekend when a man took the life of his ex-girlfriend in South Baltimore. Along with Councilwoman Porter, I introduced a Zero Waste Commission bill in the council to move us forward on zero waste and eliminating waste sent to landfills and the incinerator. Really looking forward to getting that bill passed and continuing the road toward a healthier, cleaner city for all the obvious reasons. I also touched in our last town hall on my climate package, and that includes bills along the lines of making Baltimore carbon neutral and adapting neighborhoods and city government operations toward becoming more climate friendly. Those hearings will be held next month. They were just announced in our last council meeting. And again, looking forward to getting those passed as well. Another hearing will be held, that we held today, was the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, or CPTED hearing. And we can see it in maps like this on how the prevalence of issues like high grass and weeds, vacant buildings, and other issues correlate to the locations of violent crimes throughout the city. A member of our team will be actually providing a link to this interactive map in the chat. So I'll leave it here and allow folks to ask questions. I encourage you to play around with the map, get a sense for where we're seeing issues. I think data is power here, and so I encourage you guys to take a look at what we're seeing across the city. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. With that, I will turn it back over to Maura.
Thanks so much. So we have quite a few questions we want to get through. So I'll just start slinging them at the people they're directed to. So our first one is for Tim and Charlie from Rec and Parks. Somebody asked, has the city considered doing any cleanup and clearance in Chinkopin Park? And is the Chinkopin Park sewer replacement project considered completed?
Not sure we want to take that. I mean, so the cleanup, I know there's some dialogue between parks and the weed warriors taking care of some of the invasive species that have kind of taken over there. I know that's part of that. And of course, volunteerism, this time of year is not the best time for volunteerism, but we do work with training our volunteers to help us remove a lot of the invasive species through the Weed Warrior program, which is fantastic. Ashley Bowers and I think Charlie might might be slightly involved in that, but that is something obviously we would be interested in. But again, if I don't have the answer, I will follow up and try to figure out if we can get a conclusive answer. The DPW question, I think that's part of that project. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't know that. So that's probably
So
more of a DPW question.
The DPW, it is a DPW project that's happening in Chinkopin. It is, as far as I'm aware, like 99% done. I think there's a few odds and ends that need to be finalized. We're working with them obviously with the tree planting and follow-up care of those trees, and some potential like IVM work along that project. But as far as I'm aware, there's just some very, very loose ends that like minimal loose ends that needs to be wrapped up. But for the most part, that project should be complete.
Hi, Councilman. My name is Mohammed Rahman. I'm from the Bureau of Water and Wastewater. I can provide an update on the project. We have completed the sewer work and the stream restoration work. Right now, our contractor is working on the punch list to create a as-bills. It's like an inventory of how many trees that we have planted there, and also what kind of structures that we have put in the stream itself. The contractor also has a responsibility to maintain the trees for 2 years. So even though we might have completed the project, the contractor from time and again would be coming to the site to maintain the trees, prune the trees, and fertilize them for 2 years. But the main scope of the project has been completed now.
Great, thank you so much for hopping in there. Yeah, we have a few more DPW questions. So if Director Mitchell or any other members from DPW would like to hop in, I'll just start asking those. So our first one is, are new schedules going to be distributed for cleaning storm drains and to include tree roots and trash?
So I can respond to that. So the Bureau of Water and Wastewater does have a program for tree roots and proactively removing some of the trash and fog. We are still working on the schedule. Once it's finalized, it can be made public.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahman. And our next question is for Director Mitchell / DPW as well. Has there been any consideration of a consumer or customer water filtration program where the city provides public housing in-home water filtration systems that would reduce the need for bottled water, reducing the carbon footprint of the disposable plastic bottles?
No, thank you for that question. Not at this time, but as we're looking at the infrastructure bill that was passed through our federal legislation, there are a number of items like that that we're looking at engaging with the federal government. Just around lead, around water quality, water treatment, water reuse, and so we're excited to begin to have that conversation around potentially grants are or dollars that we can go after that can provide those type of programs. So we're actively engaged with the EPA. I'll be in DC tomorrow with the EPA director and the our Vice President Harris to begin to even have some more discussions on that. So we're excited, we're well positioned to leverage a lot of the opportunities outside the infrastructure bond that are geared for these type of programs.
Thank you so much, Director Mitchell. I also just got a message relating back to Chickapin Park. Miss Jenny Morgan from Rec and Park said she had a few updates about dumping at the park. So Jenny, if you'd like to share, that'd be great. Oh, I don't think she's elevated actually, or a host or whatever it's called. So she did chat me the update. So I will be Jenny's voice for now. So Ms. Morgan, let us know that park maintenance is cleaning up the dumping spot on Chickapin on Thursdays. And they've also ordered no dumping signs and will be installing them upon receipt. So if you live around Chickapin Park, look out for that. Thanks so much, Jenny. And so we have another DPW question. When will the leaf truck come again?
When will the leaf? Could you repeat that one more time?
Sure. When will the leaf truck be coming around again?
Yvonne Moore Jackson probably could answer that question in a lot more detail. I know currently right now, we have a program whereby for the next, I think 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, you can call DPW at 311, and on Mondays, you can put up to 20 bags of leaves out on the curb. And on your normal trash pickup, you can put 5 bags of green leaf bags on the curb. But should there be a larger, more robust program, I'm going to defer to Yvonne Moore Jackson to give that update if she's still on the line.
Yes, I mean, you're correct, Director Mitchell. The residents can put those bags of leaves out with their trash. I'm not sure what she means by the leaf truck, so she would have to clarify. She talking about the street sweeper?
I'm not sure. I think the answer about the bags of leaves was helpful, but maybe a bit about street cleaning would be helpful as well, Ms. Jackson.
Yeah, so we don't encourage residents to sweep their leaves into the gutters. It clogs up our trucks and it prevents us from getting the trash, the actual trash that's in the gutters. So we don't really like when you do that. So if you could rake your leaves up, bag them up, and we'll come out to get them. If you have more than 20, then let us know. We will make a special trip to come get those. But please don't sweep them in the gutters.
Got it. Noted. Thank you very much, Ms. Moore Jackson. Our next question is for Councilman Conway. How are we looking in relief funds for businesses and families facing hardships?
Great question. So I'm really looking for ARPA funds to be used to support exactly this sort of investment. Most of the decisions on how to use the ARPA funds are actually made out of the mayor's office. I have the ability to support up to 10 projects, and we're planning on announcing 3 endorsements by the end of the year. And I've publicly shared that evaluation tool that we're using to evaluate folks that have requested our support. If there are exciting projects you want to see implemented in your neighborhoods, please encourage those folks to apply or apply yourself. But yeah, that's how we're looking at it now.
Thank you very much. So if you're not a part of our newsletter, actually, that's where we've been sharing publicly the information about the rubric that we've been using to evaluate projects. And so if you'd like to pop your email in the chat or chat it to David, he's our host right now. He can add you to that list if you don't already get our newsletter. And our next question is for Rec and Parks. So this person is asking about Deweese Rec, and they said currently we're having some lack of clarity related to the leadership at Deweese Rec. The surrounding communities have expressed interest in the implementation of programs to support. However, Deweese does not seem to have steady leadership pushing or leading this effort in coordination with the community. How can we work to better get this addressed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we've been every month we've been sitting down. We Marie's been a part of that, Mr. McFadden, a really good group of people. And I would encourage whoever this person is to be a part of that group. And so myself and Sharnice, every Tuesday, it's a great little meeting, and we discuss this. And we bring in, Errol Dean Williams is the area manager of recreation. So Renee Langley, who had been the director, she hurt herself and she was on disability for a bit. And somebody stepped in her for a bit, and then she's back. So again, I think I talked about it before. It's not enough just to create buildings and create open spaces. What's more important is providing, it's almost the paint on top of a blank canvas. And it's those experiences and those memories that are created through programming. And that's one thing that we're really focusing on developing more of that there. So we are, intentionally and working with our recreation team to fill that empty box and to provide more programming. Part of it too is that there was that lapse because of COVID. A lot of these places were closed. Now that we're starting to, let's hope, God forbid, let's hope that we get back into our spaces eventually as people become more vaccinated and we start getting in the right direction beyond this miasma, that we can get them back in these spaces. We'll have more programming there.
Great, thanks so much, Tim. And we actually have a similar question. What is the status of programming for the rec center at Walter P. Carter Elementary Middle School?
Well, unfortunately, that rec center we're having, that school is being redeveloped, so know that at least 75% of our inventory citywide, our rec centers were built in the 60s and 70s when most of them were adjoined to schools, and of course, now the schools as schools are being redeveloped, oftentimes the rec centers may or may not be a part of that calculus. And in this case, we're trying to figure out some form of recreational opportunity in that space. It's not going to be a school. I know our capital division is developing the pool renovation and for that space, but the rec center, that's a question. I don't necessarily have the answer for that, to be perfectly honest. I can look further into that to see, what the vision is for that, because it is needed, that's for sure. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Tim. I know we're really excited about the new 21st Century School at Walter P. Carter. So yeah, if you would be able to get back to our office, just any information you have about the rec center and a timeline on the pool, that'd be really exciting. We can share with
the
folks.
Pool, I think in the future, when that school does get redeveloped, it's going to be figuring out what our mission is going to be in that same space. Back in the day when we all got paid by the same mayor was one thing, but now that we're kind of two different entities, how our department works in that school space, and that's something we're trying to redevelop. Only because we have those shared spaces, and so having joint use agreements in those school spaces where we can provide programming to help them out and vice versa. I think that's probably the solution that's going to have to happen.
Okay, great. Well, we'd love to hear more about that after I can share that out. But Walter P. Carter is open. It's new. It's beautiful. If you haven't seen it yet, take a walk by, everybody. But I'll ask the next question to Director Mitchell. This question is about water billing. You called it, but this says, how come the county water bills are less than the city water bills?
Thanks. That's an excellent question. I think the way the structure of the Baltimore City water bill is different from the counties. For example, Baltimore City's water bill includes the water infrastructure charge, the water usage charge, the storm fee, the sewer processing fee, and sewer infrastructure charge. And so there's many fees that are all accumulated within the Baltimore City water bill, whether that's storm, sewer, or water. whereby Baltimore counties is uniquely different, whereby they're only being charged their water infrastructure charge and their water usage charges. So they're charging for their water bill. Many of their other bills are processed through their property taxes. So they are assessed, but they're just assessed differently. For example, their sewer infrastructure fee and sewer fees are charged differently to their residents, and they're passed through via property tax assessment, whereby Baltimore City isn't. And so I think when you wrap up where all the charges are coming from, whether property taxes and in the monthly billing or quarterly billing, with one another, the bills come out quite close. And so it's just where people see it is just they only see the piece of what's being charged in the county versus in the city. You see all those charges accumulated on the bill instead of other ways where they're being charged.
Thanks very much, Director Mitchell. I know water billing is something we hear about a lot in our office, so that's helpful insight. Our next question is for Councilman Conway. This person said, Councilman, we love seeing you out in the neighborhoods. How can I schedule a visit to my neighborhood?
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I would encourage you definitely anytime, just reach out to my office. And as I mentioned earlier, we do weekly community days where I'll go out and meet folks in the community, see the issues, follow up on issues. Feel free to just shoot me an email, mark.conway@baltimorecity.gov, and we'll come out there and meet you.
Right, and I love going on those too, so please email him. Our next question is for Charlie at Rec and Parks. Are there any plans for funding being made available for ongoing proactive maintenance of new street trees being planted, or is it more set it and forget it?
So all trees planted through our program, whether it's us providing them or our contracted plantings, are set with 2 years of watering and maintenance. That is what we call the time that basically establishment period. So after 2 years, a tree can get enough water and nutrients from nature and its surroundings where it doesn't need that. Obviously, pruning and things like that as it grows up will be required. So that's where something like the Tree Keepers program comes in. So, for example, this past Saturday and this upcoming Saturday is the second part of our pruning class, which is in person, and we're going to a site where the trees were planted like 4 or 5 years ago. And we're going to teach people how to properly plant while pruning the trees that needed to be pruned. And the goal of that program is to train people to go back into their own neighborhoods and prune trees properly that are in that like 3 to 5 year range. So that's kind of the way that maintenance is involved as far as funding is concerned. Our contractual planting, we pay a contractor to plant, well, to provide the tree, to plant the tree, and to water and mulch the tree for 2 years. So that's automatically built in. And we work with DPW for their projects where they're replanting and things like chinkapin to do the same. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Another question for Director Mitchell or a representative from DPW. How are residents selected for the Residential Advisory Council?
That's excellent. Thank you for that question. We're working on processes and procedures for that. That will be coming out in the new year. So please sign up for, on our website, publicworks.baltimorecity.gov/subscribe. We'll be getting a lot of information out, how folks can get engaged and be partners with us at that table. So we're excited to be getting that out shortly as we begin to start the new calendar year.
Great, thank you. And that's the URL just was popped in the chat. Thank you, David. So next question is for Councilman Conway. Someone is asking about removal of phone booths on York Road. They've become trash receptacles and storage for other things that we don't want. And 3 years ago, they may have been, or 3 years ago, they've been made no longer, so they're no longer new ones being put in. And DOT was supposed to come out with a plan for paper streets. So just wondering about any plans for both of those things.
Sure, yeah. So I followed up with DOT on paper streets to see if they developed a plan for this project, and we haven't heard back yet. But yes, we can work toward removing the phone booths, and my team has already reached out about this in the past. We'll just make sure to follow up with DOT to get a timeline and a solution. So we'll make sure to provide updates on that.
Okay, and another tree question for you, Charlie. How many trees can a homeowner request for their property?
That's a good question. So the way that for people's front and backyards, we do the tree giveaway program. What that means, we partner with DPW. DPW has these amazing things called grow centers, where they go into different neighborhoods and communities and set up resource centers for the day. Usually there's 3 or 4 of them. I think this past fall they had like 5 or 6. It was the most they've ever had. And so when those happen, we go to those. We usually only bring about 25 to 30 trees at those. So we limit the number that people can to take home with them to like 1 to 3, depending on how many trees are available in a given event. But then we also have larger giveaways that we've been utilizing, an online store where you can pre-register for trees, and I think we limit it to 3 per event. So you could get more if you were to register for more events. Typically, we do at least 1, if not 2 giveaways per year, or per season, sorry, the big ones, and then out in the community in the smaller ones.
Great, good to know. Thank you. So another tree question. When will the trees be watered at Alhambra Park? These trees don't get watered from rec and parks or from contractors.
I will have to check who planted them. I think those were our contractor. So I will get with them. Obviously, we wouldn't be watering now. Typically, watering only happens between like late May through like late August, maybe early September. But whoever asked that question, if you are seeing dry weather in late spring and not seeing them get watered, please shoot me an email or reach out to us through the website, and we'll make sure that we get on our contractors. As I said, we plant thousands of trees per year. So keeping eyes on every single one of them to make sure that the contractor is diligent on watering. Sometimes we rely on you all to be our eyes and ears for our trees.
Great. And we have another tree question. I'm just going to keep them rolling for you. Can one request fruit trees?
Great question. We actually do host once a year, and it is in the springtime, a fruit tree fair. I don't quite know what that will look like this year because of COVID. Pre-COVID, we actually would have like a bunch of different vendors that were tree oriented. So like there's a nonprofit called the Baltimore Orchard Project in Baltimore, who are really our knowledge-based group that we buy trees for, and they put orchards into like faith-based organizations, schools, community parks and lots and things like that. And we provide the trees for them, but they have the know-how and the community engagement to put them in. For individual fruit trees, though, we do have that fruit tree fair, which is basically run like our tree giveaway program, but it's like once every year during the spring, and we provide native fruit trees, so things like pawpaws and persimmons. I think sometimes we provide figs, which aren't actually native, but I like to consider them native because they survive very well here, and they're just outside our range. But yes, so we do. When that will be, I do not know. It's December. I'm just getting in the tree order set up right now. So again, check out our social media and our website. We'll be updating those things for spring. I would assume if we do have one, It'll probably be similar to the online experience where you would register for it online. And it would probably be hosted in probably mid to late April. We would know more in March. So just check back then.
I can speak to this figs. I have a fig that I got from Charlie 7 years ago. It's like over 10 feet tall now. It's fancy. They're fantastic.
All right, good to know. I want a tree now. Well, thank you, everybody. We actually had a bunch more questions, but unfortunately, we're running short on time. So we will make sure our team will be sure to put those questions together for all of our agency representatives, send those out, get answers back, and communicate those to all of the participants in the meeting today. And so I'll hand it back to Councilman Conway then for our closing remarks, but thank you everyone for your questions.
Thank you, Maura. And I really want to thank the team. You guys are the bomb for hosting this and pulling this all together. I want to thank DPW, of course, Health, and Rec and Parks for coming out, answering questions, giving us updates on all the great things you guys are doing. It means a lot to see you guys out in the district virtually. And we'll be sure to follow up on any other additional questions and issues with you guys. Once again, I can't thank the district enough for the opportunity to serve. I hope you're pleased with the work we're doing so far, but I can tell you I'm having a hell of a time. It's been great. Learned so much in this job thus far, and I can't be more excited about the coming year. I think we got a lot of great stuff coming up. Once again, our contact information is up here. My entire team is up here. If you need to get in contact with any of my teammates, please feel free to do so. I'm easy to find. Mark.conway@baltimorecity.gov as well. But with that, I really just want to thank you guys again. Always a pleasure. And please stay safe going into the holiday. And I probably won't see many of you before the end of the new year. So happy holidays and happy new year. Have a great night.